Stop! Get me across the street to that gas station. Get in! All right! Thanks a lot. Good morning, sir. Yeah. A little trouble? Conked out on me. Ignition, battery, I don't know what.
We'll have a look at it. Pull the hood latch, will you?
Fine. You got a phone I could use?
Right over there.
Thanks. Excuse me.
Well, honey, they must be here somewhere. They said they sent them over.
I'm doing the best I can.
Come on.
Here you are.
Margie, have these stamped to mail right away, will
Yes,
you?
Miss Peters. Burton Advertising.
It's about time. Give me Miss Manning.
Who did you want?
Miss Manning.
Who's calling?
What's the difference? Who's calling? Give me Miss Manning.
Is that you, Mr. Burton?
Yes, it's me, Mr. Burton.
Just a minute. I'll connect you right away.
Hello?
Miss Manning, my car broke down. I'm calling from a gas station. 14th and Sycamore, northeast corner. Now, look, first of all, call Mr. Jackson at Aerochemical and cancel the meeting. I'm soaking wet. I'm going to have to go home and change clothes. I still have to pick up those samples at Acme. Now, look, I've also got a new idea I want to present. It'll take a little more time to do the artwork.
Cancel meeting with Mr. Jackson.
Oh, no, wait a minute. I'd better have Blackburn call Jackson. Put me through to him. And get a hold of Harry in the shipping room and tell him to come down here and pick up my car as soon as it's ready. I'll grab a cab.
Yes, sir, I'll tell him. Now I'll get you Mr. Blackburn.
Well, don't take our word for it, Mr. Jackson. Just listen to the motivational research boys. The most influential single factor in impulse buying at point of sale is packaging.
Come on.
Now, we've made a study of it. Miss Gahan. Miss Gahan.
Mr. Blackburn's office doesn't answer.
What do you mean it doesn't answer? You find him. And meanwhile, give me Joe Peters downstairs in the art department.
Yes, sir.
So he's the boss. He's still human. I put it to him cold turkey. Henry, I said, with my obligations, I gotta have $450 a week just to get out of bed in the morning. Hello?
Who are you trying to impress?
Oh, hello. Is that you, Mr. Burton? I was just telling one of the fellas,
Never mind. And look, I called about those sketches for Jackson this morning. We're going to toss them out. I came up with a completely new idea.
toss them out. But the meeting's in 45 minutes.
No. I'm going to postpone it, at least until this afternoon. And we don't need anything fancy, just a few lines to rough in the idea. Now, here is what I want.
This is Mr. Jackson at Aerochemical. Is Mr. Burton there?
He's on another line right now.
I see. Will you please tell him that I should be a few minutes late at the meeting this morning?
Yes, sir.
Goodbye. They're working on a new display, and I've got to get over there to see it. As soon as we finish this report.
Yes.
Yeah? Yeah, Henry, we're doing the best we can. Bill's working on it right now.
Is that Burton on the phone? I want to talk to him.
Henry, George Blackburn just walked in. He wants to talk to you. Look, we got to work out a whole new pitch for Jackson.
By 10 o'clock?
No, by this afternoon. Here, you argue with him.
Henry? Well, hello, stranger. I've been calling all over the office for you. And look, I want you to phone Jackson and cancel the meeting for this morning.
Well, that doesn't...
I know it's a little late, George, but my car's stalled in the rain. Now just call him and explain what happened. He'll understand. I'll see you in about an hour.
This is George Blackburn. Will you ring Miss Gahan, please?
Mr. Blackbird's office.
Miss Gahan, I want you to get Mr. Jackson at Arrow Chemical on the phone for me right away. I'm in Mr. Peters' office. Oh, and bring my presentation notes down here, will you, please?
Margie, I'd like to place an outside call to Arrow Chemical Company. Well, I know the number. Haven't you got a list or something out there? Well, would you look it up and contact me, please?
Mr. Jackson's office, Miss West.
Mr. Blackbird, Burton Advertising, like to speak to Mr. Jackson.
Who? Just a moment, please. Oh, Mr. Jackson, somebody at Burton Advertising wants to speak to you.
What do you mean, somebody?
Well, she gave me a name, but I can't make it out. Sounded like Blackbird.
Oh, Blackburn. He's the new account executive. Probably just returning my call to Burton. All right, I'll talk to him.
Mr. Jackson will be right with you.
Hello, Blackburn. I'm just leaving now. What?
I said, if you'll hold on, please, I'll connect you with Mr. Blackburn. Margie, will you transfer this call to Mr. Blackburn? He's in Mr. Peters' office.
I'm sorry, Judy. Mr. Peters' line's busy.
Okay, honey. Hold on, Mr. Jackson. Mr. Blackburn will be with you in a minute.
Ah! Can you imagine a person placing a call and not being available when it's answered? If he calls back, tell him I'm on my way.
Yes, dear. Yes, dear, I think it's fine if you invite Tom to your party. Well, then don't invite Grace. Well, then invite Grace and don't invite Tom.
Hey, I'm expecting a call. Very important. Will you hurry up, please?
Oh, yes, dear, of course I'm listening. Look, why don't you invite Tom and Grace, and maybe they'll start speaking again. That's a fine idea. All right, honey, goodbye. See you tonight. My bride's been getting up this little dinner party.
This is Mr. Blackburn. I'm expecting an important...
Oh, yes, Mr. Blackburn. Miss Gahan had a call for you, but the party hung up. It was, Crest line 64101.
Good grief. Call him back right away. I'll hang on.
What's wrong, George?
Jackson must have called in and got the runaround. He still doesn't know the meeting's canceled.
Mr. Jackson's office, Miss West.
This is George Blackburn of Burton Advertising. May I speak to Mr. Jackson, please?
Oh, yes, Mr. Blackburn. I'm sorry Mr. Jackson has left. He said he'd see you at the meeting.
Oh, you mean... No, it's all right.
What happened?
I didn't reach him in time. He's on his way.
What do you mean he's not here?
Well, you see, Mr. Jackson, Mr. Burton's car broke down this
And
morning.
you know how bad the weather's been.
I ought to know. I've been out in it for the last half hour.
Oh, we're terribly sorry.
We tried to reach you by phone.
You tried. Well, if you'd shown enough courtesy to place the call yourself, this wouldn't have happened.
Well, there's been a little bit of a mix-up.
You're telling me. Well, it's the last mix-up you're going to involve me in. If your organization isn't efficient enough to place one simple phone call, how can it handle an entire advertising campaign?
Mr. Jackson.
Good day.
Tell him. I guess I'll have to tell him.
Mr. Blackbird, Mr.
What's wrong? Why is everyone out here?
Well, to come right out with it, Mr. Burton, we had a little bad luck this morning.
Bad luck?
Yes, sir. We didn't reach Jackson in time to cancel the meeting. When he got here, Miss Manning and I tried to explain to him, but he was pretty upset. I think we've lost a client.
That's fine.
Well, I didn't have much time to reach him.
If you'd been in your office when I called in, you'd have had plenty of time.
I was in my office.
Then why didn't you pick up your phone?
Because that's my secretary's job.
I was in the ladies' room.
Maybe we should put a phone in there. Now get Jackson for me. The least I can do is apologize for this mess.
Yes, sir.
I still don't see how you missed him. It only takes 1 minute to make a phone call.
Well, this one got a little complicated.
Is Mr. Jackson in? Mr. Burton of Burton Advertising is calling.
One moment, please. Mr. Burton calling.
You mean crawling. Well, it wasn't really his fault. I'll take it. Look, Burton, I understand mistakes can happen, but...
I said this is Mr. Burton's secretary. Would you hold on a moment, please?
Hold on! Hold on! Doesn't anybody over there place their own calls? What kind of a merry-go-round you folks running over there?
Is that Jackson on the phone?
It was, but he hung up.
Miss Manning, will you get me a cup of coffee, please?
Cream and sugar?
Just arsenic. Well, that, as far as I could piece it together, is what happened. So, when they'd all gone, I started wandering around here, trying to figure out how, with all this fine equipment, my people could get so tangled up trying to make one phone call. That's when I decided to call the telephone company. I figured it's your equipment, you're the experts. Maybe you've got the answers.
I'm sure we can help, Mr. Burton. To start with, has your Miss Harris had any switchboard training?
I don't think so. The girl that was here before showed her.
We can send someone over to work with her. It's one of our services. There's no charge.
Good.
While I was waiting in the reception room, I was watching her. I noticed she has several duties. Mail clerk, typist, receptionist.
Too much, huh?
It may have had something to do with what happened here yesterday.
Then you think if I straighten out this switchboard situation, we'll have it licked?
No, but it's a start. The rest can be solved by courteous, common-sense telephone usage.
You mean by all our employees?
Right. Now, Mr. Burton, I have here some charts that list the things experience has proven to be effective.
Just a minute, please. Miss Manning, will you come in here? I want my secretary in on this. I'm going to need her help. Miss Manning, this is Miss Rogers of the telephone company.
How do you do? How do you do?
I've called her in to see if she can help improve our telephone habits around here. Will you please sit down? Now, if she has any ideas that'll do the job, we can pass it on to the rest of the staff. Will you please go ahead?
Thank you.
Telephone courtesy pays off.
First, I'm going to borrow your telephone for a moment, if you don't mind.
Please do.
I'll fix it with your switchboard, girl. This is Miss Rogers. When I hang up, will you please ring in here? After that, pay no attention to my signals for the next few minutes. I'll just be demonstrating. That's right. Thank you. Now for suggestion number 1. Answer promptly. Even if I'm speaking to someone in my office... Oh, excuse me, Mr. Burton. I pick the phone up right away. The party calling has no way of knowing if I'm busy. You are right here. You understand. So I excuse myself to you and answer promptly. Of course, sometimes you may not want to answer your calls. In these cases, your secretary can handle them. Identify yourself. Like this. Mr. Burton's office, Miss Rogers. That's instead of saying hello. It works out better if you identify yourself right away on both incoming and outgoing calls. If you announce your company or department and your name, you save a lot of time.
Well, Miss Rogers, what if you had to transfer a call?
Oh, well, that's our next point. Transfer calls properly. Simply press the switch hook twice, slowly. Then pause. Twice, then pause. It isn't necessary to use another telephone or line to get your operator. When she answers, will you please transfer this call to Mr. Jones in accounting? Thank you. Keep pad and pencil handy. This is an obvious point, yet often neglected. A lot of important information comes in over the telephone, so be ready to write it down. It saves callbacks and guarantees accuracy. Leave a message when you leave your telephone. It's always a good idea to tell your secretary or your switchboard girl where you can be reached. Then they can take messages or transfer your calls to you.
Miss Manning always knows where I am. Don't you?
Another important suggestion, place and receive your own calls. If you're in the habit of having someone else place your calls for you, you're not only wasting time, but you may irritate clients. On incoming calls, answer yourself. You'll make friends of customers. List frequently called numbers. Make up a list of the numbers used most often and keep it close to your telephone. It's a wonderful time saver. And here's an annoying habit that should be avoided. When answering for others or screening call, don't say who's calling. You know how irritating that can be. It's the same as saying, if you're important enough, I'll talk to you. Instead, ask, may I tell him who's calling, please? It's so simple, yet it makes such a difference.
Yeah. When I was calling from that phone booth in the rain, Miss Harris threw me a who's calling, and I almost blew my top.
That's the point exactly. Now here's one of our last points. If you leave the line, explain why. If you have to leave the line for some reason, for example, to get facts or figures, explain the problem to your caller, like this. It will take a little time to get that information. Do you wish to wait, or may I call you back? Then, whatever the caller says, indicate you understand. Acknowledge with some natural expression, such as, thank you, certainly, of course, so that he knows you understand. He can't see your facial expression, you know. And lastly, terminate calls courteously. The best way yet is a simple, pleasant goodbye. And that's it.
That doesn't sound very involved.
It isn't really. But just consider how smoothly things would have gone if when you called in yesterday, everyone had followed those suggestions.
Burton Advertising, good morning.
Miss Harris, this is Mr. Burton. Will you please connect me with Miss Manning?
Of course, Miss Burton. One moment, please.
Mr. Burton's office, Miss Manning.
Miss Manning, I'm having some trouble with my card. Will you take care of a few things for me? We're going to postpone the Jackson meeting until this afternoon or tomorrow morning. I want you to transfer me to George Blackburn when you get the rest of this down.
Have Harry pick up your car at gas station 14th and Sycamore. Then you're going home, and then to Acme Packaging.
Now, will you transfer me over to Blackburn?
Right away.
Yes, Miss Manning.
Would you transfer this call to Mr. Blackburn, please?
Well, don't take our word for it, Mr. Jackson. Just listen to the motivational research boys. The most influential single factor, pardon me. Blackburn.
George, this is Henry Burton. We're going to have to cancel the Jackson meeting this morning. Now, my car broke down. I still haven't picked up the package of samples yet. Now, I want you to phone Jackson right away and explain things. Make my apologies. And if he can see us this afternoon, that's fine. Tomorrow might even be better. Now, I've got a new angle on this campaign I want to discuss with you and Joe Peters. Come to think of it, switch me over to Joe right now, will you?
You bet. Miss Harris, will you transfer this call to Mr. Peters' office?
So he's the boss. He's still human. Excuse me. Our department, Peters. Yes, Henry, what can I do for you?
And that's all there would have been to it, hmm? Courtesy, common sense, and a switchboard operator who has time to be one.
Well, those things would have made the handling of your incoming calls a lot more efficient. But there's still the question of the outgoing call to Mr. Jackson. Consider how it might have gone if Mr. Blackburn had followed the cardinal rule for outgoing calls.
What's that?
Place the call yourself.
Outside line, please.
You notice Mr. Blackburn is dialing correctly. As he should, he's bringing the dial all the way to the finger stop, removing the finger completely each time, allowing the dial to return by itself. It's on the return trip that your number is dialed.
I didn't know that.
Mr. Jackson's office, please.
Mr. Jackson's office, Miss West.
This is George Blackburn of Burton Advertising. Is Mr. Jackson there?
Oh, yes, Mr. Blackburn. Just a moment, please. Oh, Mr. Jackson. Mr. Blackburn of Burton Advertising.
All right, I'll talk to him.
Mr. Jackson will be right with you.
Yes, George. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Stuck at the gas station in all this rain. I hope he's got his water skis with him. Huh? Yes, of course. Tomorrow morning will be fine. Same time? Yeah. Thanks for calling. You know, that Blackburn's a pretty smart fella. Got a good sense of humor, too. Well, I won't be going to the meeting today. And I can't say I mind. Look at it come down.
Well, you may have a point. But it's common practice to have your secretary or the switchboard operator place your outgoing calls. I do it all the time.
How do you like it when someone does it to you?
Does what?
When you're told that a Mr. So-and-so is calling, and you pick up the phone and the girl says, hold the wire, Mr. So-and-so wants to speak to you, what do you think of Mr. So-and-so?
I think he's a so-and-so. And that's exactly what I did to Jackson yesterday to top the whole thing off. And I guess before I blame anybody around here, I better start with myself. We're going to have a little meeting of our people, and I shall make a speech on telephone courtesy.
Good. Would you like a closing sentence for it?
Yes, what?
Telephone as you'd be telephoned to.
I'll use it and I'll illustrate it.
Well, Mr. Burton, that's about all there is to it. I think I've covered everything.
I wish I'd called you in sooner. I know that's going to make a tremendous difference around here. Thank you very much, Miss Rogers, for coming over.
It's a pleasure. We appreciate being able to help.
You can go out this way.
Goodbye, Mr. Burton. Miss Manning,
Thanks
goodbye.
again, Miss Rogers. Miss Manning, call a meeting of the staff in 1 hour. I have a speech to make.
Yes, sir.
Burton Advertising, good morning. Mr. Burton? Mr. Burton will be back at 3 o'clock, Mr. Patterson. May I have him call you?
The only reason I'm here, I want you to know this whole thing has been a lesson to us. We called in a consultant from the telephone company. She's jacked up our telephone manners. Now, whether we've lost your business or not, if you ever have occasion to call me again, I think you'll notice the difference.
Henry, I've got to give you credit for recognizing your problem and doing something about it. But I'm still not convinced. I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll make a deal with you.
What kind of a deal?
I'm going to try a little test. If you can prove to me that you can call Blackburn over at your office and reach him in less than half an hour.
Be my guest.
Well.
Shall I relieve you now, Margie?
Fine, thanks.
Burton Advertising, good morning. Mr. Blackburn? Just a moment, please.
Art department, Peters. Just a minute. George, it's for you.
Thank you. Blackburn.
Oh, hello, George.
Oh, hello, Mr. Jackson.
This is just a test call to settle a bet with your boss. Guess I'll have to buy him a lunch. See you later.
Don't tell me.
The old man's having lunch with Mr. Jackson.
Gentlemen, follow me.